Jeff mentioned the importance of having a good team around you. You know the saying that it's far better to have a champion team than a team of champions. During your journey through property development, it's going to be important for you to bring people on board that can work well together. The last thing that you're going to need is two highly paid professionals that bicker amongst each other and pass the buck. At the end of the day, the only person that's going to pay is you, and you'll be paying in the form of time delays and the associated cost blowouts that come with time delays. Jeff also mentioned the need to, on occasions, consult an arborist. Significant trees can pose a problem to property developers, and we're going to be speaking with Eliot next from Adelaide Tree Surgery, who will tell us some of the things that a developer may want to keep in mind before purchasing a development site. So let's go have a chat with Mark. So Mark, tell us a bit about yourself. What does an arborist do?
An arborist manages trees in the urban environment.
Yep.
So that could be to do with development sites, it could be to do with trees and reserves. So yeah, we manage trees.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, you not only would work for a developer, but you can also work for councils as well, because you're essentially the experts on trees.
Yeah, due to the lack of number of qualified arborists throughout South Australia, you do get called to work for the council, you do get called to work for developers. So you do see both sides of it. There was this local school, they did some tree damage activity, and the council called us in to work from their side, the council side.
Okay.
And that was, in that case there, that was some building going on with this stimulus package for Education Department, and they did some tree damaging activity, not removing the trees, tree damaging activity, and in the end these trees had to be removed because they damaged the root system of the tree, made the trees unstable and unsafe, it became an unacceptable risk to private and public safety, so the trees were removed. I can't comment whether there's going to be fines in place, but I'm pretty certain there will be some consequences due to the damage caused to those trees.
And how long have you been involved in this business?
In this business, I've been in the business for my own business for 7 years, which we started off as a contracting business carrying out arboriculture work. In the last two and a half years we brought the consultancy side into the business, the consulting arborist side of the business.
And what does that involve?
That involves all this work on development sites and doing tree reports for people that either want to manage trees or get trees removed.
What are some of the penalties associated with removing a tree without consent?
There are fines in place for people that do remove significant trees or that do carry out tree damaging activity. In South Australia here, the fines were increased in June 2008 from $30,000 up to $120,000 for a single tree. In other states, I believe these fines do vary, so it's important they check out.
And the fines can actually be greater?
Much greater in other states other than South Australia.
So Mark, what is a significant tree?
A significant tree in South Australia is a single stem tree that has a greater circumference of 2 metres, measured at 1 metre above ground level. In the case of a twin stem tree, has combined together and has a greater circumference of 2 metres. And in the case of a multi-stem tree, if those stems have an average greater than 0.625 or 625 millimetres, it is then classified as a significant tree.
So that means that you go 1 metre above ground level for that multi-stem tree, and if there are 10 stems there, if the combined average is greater than 0.625, that's deemed to be a significant tree.
That's correct.
Alright, so I guess from a developer's perspective, how could you help a developer? If a developer had a great big whopping tree in the middle of the block, how would you be able to help a developer?
We'd be able to obviously inspect that site, inspect the tree, and from that start we'd be able to inform the developer whether that tree can be removed.
And just another thing as well, Mark, what would be the chances if you give a recommendation that a tree can be removed or can or can't be removed, what are the chances that that will actually happen?
I'd say the chances are pretty high, but it's up to the developer to seek the right arborist for the job and to get the arborist to actually comment on that tree and not comment on what the developer wants. Because if you comment on what the developer wants, it might not get through council.
Yeah, why is that the case? Are there checks in place at the council that can double check what the arborist has done?
Most definitely. Councils have their own arborists, internal arborists in council, and they also bring in independent arborists to cross-reference the reports that have been submitted in regards to that development site.
So basically, a developer can bring an arborist on board.
Yes.
Potentially say to the arborist, hypothetically, here's an extra $500. Can you give us a favourable report that this tree is infested with disease? The arborist could potentially, although you wouldn't do it, but let's say an arborist did do that. What would end up happening is that would go to the council. The council would then send their own arborist out, essentially see that the tree is fine, and then to confirm that, they could essentially get another arborist on board to confirm that yes, it is fine.
Exactly.
And if the developer's purchased the site and has no subject to conditions saying that subject to removal of the tree, they could essentially be stuck with that site.
That's right, with a significant tree in the middle of it.
And potentially be able to do nothing with it.
Yeah, that's right. If an arborist starts commenting on stuff that's not there,
it will be caught out.
It'll be caught out and not get approved.
Okay.
Councils are very, I suppose, hot is the word, in regards to significant trees and the retention of significant trees.
So really it's in the developer's best interest that they get a highly qualified arborist in that knows exactly what they're doing, that can tell them from the get-go, either buy the site or don't buy the site.
Exactly, or we can work around these significant trees or can't work around these significant trees.
Now, when you talk about being able to work around significant trees or not being able to work around significant trees, what do you mean by that?
We can certainly offer recommendations in working around trees and work in conjunction with engineers, architects, draftsmen by offering alternate options in regards to pier and beam, screw pile, footings, etc. And we can also carry out diagnostics in regards to do some root investigation with significant trees as well, which also help with development sites.
Okay. If you were able to remove the tree, what would be some of the factors that you would have to look for to ensure that, yeah, this tree probably should be removed?
We look at the tree's health and condition and also determine the tree's life expectancy. If it's a short life expectancy, we probably support removal.
So does that mean that, first of all, the tree can be riddled with disease?
Mm-hmm.
That would warrant its removal, potentially?
Potentially.
Yeah. And also, if the tree, on average, lives to 100 years old, and you look at it and you say, well, this is about 95 years old, you'd also give a recommendation for its removal as well.
Take that into consideration. It's also species specific as well. You know, you're looking at, you know, your eucalyptus varieties might be more tolerant to it, where your exotic varieties might be less tolerant to it.
Is this tolerant to age?
Tolerant to disease, pest and disease, tolerant to age, etc.
Okay, so in that case, for example, if there was potentially a native tree and it did have signs of disease on it, an arborist may very well turn around and say, well, look, we still recommend its retention because the degree of disease that this tree has doesn't warrant its removal.
That's right. There might be some other remedial options available to maintain this tree. And that's how council will assess these applications that are submitted to them.
Alright.
I've actually heard of a couple of palm trees being stolen overnight that were significant on development sites that just disappeared.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Happens all the time.
The trees aren't protected, there's nothing to stop the development from
taking them out.
However, we will advise, based on our expertise, to, if possible, to retain, because it will have more of a positive impact on the site.
In some cases, trees will offer greater amenity to the area and greater amenity to the project on completion.
So in some instances, it may be of benefit to the developer to retain the tree or the various shrubs.
Yes.
But I guess it has to be a balance of how much that's going to interfere with the profit margins as well.
Exactly.
And how far from a significant tree can I build?
There's certain formulas that we'll use, an arborist will use, to determine a tree protection zone around the base of a tree.
And that would be based on, say, species and age?
Species and age can play a part in it.
Yeah.
But the former is normally a measurement taken the diameter of the tree at breast height, which is called DBH.
Yeah.
The Australian standard is to times that by 10. So if you've got a diameter of 0.8 of a metre, times that by 10, that's 8 metres. That tree has a tree protection zone of 8 metres around the whole trunk of that tree.
Right. So it's essentially to ensure that footings aren't dug into the root system, which may ultimately affect the tree.
Yeah, exactly.
If a developer finds a site that is totally clear of trees on that site, but directly adjacent to the boundary on the neighbouring site, there's a great big whopping significant tree. What's the issue around that?
We have to consider those trees and neighbouring properties. We have to consider council trees along verges. And the same applies with tree protection zones when they are trees outside of the development site.
And also the consequence of them not being protected throughout the development. Could that essentially be later on down the track, some damage is done to the root structure, which could in fact lead later on down the track to safety issues, public safety issues?
Most definitely. Trees sometimes take a long time to respond, depending on the variety of trees or the species of trees. So yeah, most definitely the issue might not be immediately, it might be 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the track.
And if a tree were to happen to fall onto a house and it were found that that tree was damaged prior, that could be a problem, couldn't it?
Most definitely. The arborist essentially could be responsible or liable for not passing on the correct information.
Or the developer could be responsible for not complying with that information.
That's right.
How would I go about selecting a well-qualified arborist? What qualifications are required for an arborist to be able to submit reports to council?
They need to have a level 5 in arboriculture as a minimum. It's also important, I probably should mention too, that for people that do carry out work, the actual practical work, the pruning work, etc., significant trees on site need to have a minimum qualification of level 3. And that's a requirement by local government.
Cool.
So that's also important to know as well for developers too.
Yeah.
They don't just get some tree lopper in doing the work.
Okay. What would be the consequence if they didn't mark?
Again, if the incorrect work's carried out by people with the incorrect qualifications, there are fines or consequences.
Would that be because they may actually be engaging in tree damaging activities because they just don't know what they're doing?
That's correct. Or if they're not following an arborist report or arborist recommendations. Other things to consider when selecting an arborist is they have the appropriate insurances, public liability and public indemnity insurances. Or you could go through the local South Australian Society of Arboriculture and seek a qualified arborist through the society.
And I would suspect that in various states and territories there'd be similar bodies.
Most definitely.
Hey, thanks so much for your comments, Mark.
Cheers, mate.